Hi guys, we're now halfway through Mamemeister's High Score Kerfuffle Season 6, and last week's game was a choice from last week's winner, Colin. And that was iRobot, released in 1984 by Atari. As I said last week, this was the first game to use polygonal graphics, and it looks great. You've got 3D environments that you can move the camera with too, which is nice. I do have a number of issues with the game though, that suck the fun out of it for me. Firstly, the biggest issue I have is the use of the teleporter. You can skip levels, which when you complete them, deliver a big bonus. I don't dislike this as a feature, as it lets you see more of the game, but my issue is that skipping the level delivers more points than just playing the levels. This means that the game is encouraging you to skip levels to achieve a high score, which I don't think is good for an arcade game. Taken to the extreme, you can skip straight to level 10, and if you complete that, then you can do 100,000 points. The next thing is that your performance on one run influences your scoring potential in the next, which is another bad feature for an arcade game, where I would say each credit should be independent of the others. Beyond these issues, the game is okay, I just didn't enjoy it and didn't make me want to come back to play. This is a similar situation to last week, a game with some issues, but with a few people that did like it. So let's take a look at the scores. So we had 16 scores this week, and a mix of those taking the game seriously and others putting in a token effort. I had my lowest finish for a long time down in 10th. I just couldn't bring myself to play again, given the issues I mentioned. The next lot of folks were all pretty close. Mark is just ahead of me in 9th. Robert is the first over 100,000, with Retro Arcade Challenge, Juff, and Graham just ahead. Milthy has done well for 4th, and then our top 3 is made up of Paul in 3rd, who squeezed out Milthy last night. KMA put in a very decent score and was leading at the time of posting, and has finished in 2nd. But after taking his debut win last week, it's now back-to-back wins for Colin, and he was the class of the field once again, with the only person over 200,000 points. I would say these wins are like buses, but for Colin, they've got to be more like trains. He certainly sees plenty of those. Well done, Colin, for another great effort. Here is the distribution of the scores. We're pretty far away from a normal distribution. We've got our token efforts on the left, then a big grouping of 4th to 10th in the middle, a whole bin ahead of the previous group. On the right, we have Milthy and Paul, who've separated themselves from the big group, and then KMA and Colin, each with their own bin. So this was a strong, but not truly dominant performance this week, like some we've had. And now the difficulty curve. We see a steep initial slope as people get on top of the early game, and then the curve flattens off with people getting stuck around the 100,000 mark. Beyond that, it seems things climb again, as those that were able to get on top of the game were able to make significant progress, as we saw with Colin and with KMA. And finally, a return of the scores over time plot, and we can see how busy things are in the mid-table. Colin set the first benchmark, which was soon overcome by Juff, who then didn't play again after dropping that score. Around the middle of the week, that score was bettered by Colin again, who was then beaten by KMA. About a day later, it was Colin who regained the lead, and then continued to better his score twice without anyone else getting close. Notable mentions include Milthy, who gradually improved his score over the week, and Paul, who made progress early on, and upped things further yesterday. I played on the first day, then again midweek, but that was me done. We're now halfway through the season, so let's take a look at the league table. Retro Arcade Challenge is up 2 with that decent performance this week. Mark has got ahead of Leaguesy, but KMA is the big mover after that 2nd place, and he's up 4 into 8th. Milthy has got ahead of Ian, and then towards the top of the table, Colin has continued to climb with those back-to-back wins. He's up 2, all the way into 2nd, getting ahead of Paul, who's also got ahead of me. 2nd to 4th is still pretty close, and don't ride off Juffer in 5th, depending on what game comes up. At the top though, and continuing to lead the table, is Graham. He's got a nearly 80-point lead, and is very much the favourite for the season win at the halfway point. Now, on to the next game. Our next game is one from 1985, and I've had 16 games sent to me. Our most popular game was Ghosts and Goblins with 3 submissions, and Colin's choice of Exed Exes matches that probability after the win this week. Green Beret and Dig Dug 2 also received 2 votes each, so let's set things going and see what we get. Okay, it's slowing down now. Oh, Colin has been lucky again. Okay, so Exed Exes, it's definitely a Capcom game. I think it's a shmup. I'll go look it up, make a short video, and back in a sec. So this week's game is Exed Exes, released by Capcom in 1985. This game reminded me of Star Force, but it's more of a follow-up to Capcom's previous game, Vulgus. It is a vertically oriented, vertical scrolling shooter set with a space theme. There's not a huge amount to say about this, as like the other two games I mentioned, it feels a little generic, without a huge amount of character. But that doesn't mean there isn't a solid game in there, and I expect this will be a decent week. This is another game that's on the Mister, which is great from my perspective, so I'll be playing there this week, and I expect I'll be enjoying things more than the last two games that we've had. This game did see a release on the Famicom. Maybe I should do a little look at video later this week. Next week's game will be from 1986, so please send your suggestions. We've already had Rolling Thunder, Outrun, Rampage, and Rygar. We could have Bubble Bobble, Salamander, Jackal, Arkanoid, or more. So I hope you all enjoy playing some Exed Exes. I'm glad we've got a shmup. Hopefully we'll get a good number of people playing. I'll be back next week with the scores and the next game. See you then.